Okay, in this section, we're going to go over just this first section of our worksheet. The first video showed us what it is that we're calculating and why we're trying to get to our net revenue for our decision tree. So if you didn't follow that video or you have more questions on that, go back and watch that video first, and then we will go through these options individually. So this first option, and you'll notice on the top of our worksheet, we have an option list here. It's important to note these. So this first option that we have is going to be our status quo, no change. So this is essentially going to figure out this node right here. And we might even want to put a note there. Decision tree, whoops, I need to type correctly. Node 4. Okay. So now that we have our decision tree node 4 title, we know which we're taking care of. We need to have our chair 1, 2, and 3. And for all of these worksheets, I'm going to title chair 1 as our supreme, chair 2 as our standard, and chair 3 as our basic, so that we can keep these consistently throughout these videos and throughout our worksheets. Our annual demand forecast is going to come from our sales forecast. So when we went through our sales forecasting methods, we completed a seasonality factor. We had 2 worksheets essentially that we needed to complete. The first one told us a couple of different pieces of information that we're going to need. We had our current 2015 data, 2015 data. For this one, this is our supreme chair. We had 7 employees that produced an average of 172 chairs sold per month, a total of 2,064 chairs sold per year, and an average of 25 chairs sold per person per month. From this worksheet, we also obtained our seasonality forecaster factors. So here we have our seasonality forecast factors that we put in here. And this allowed us to determine that if our growth rates had a 10% reduction or a 30% increase, just like from our decision tree, here, here, and here, based off of the seasonality factors, what would that gross sales volume look like? So we now have the total sales, the estimated sales volume for each chair, supreme, standard, and basic, if we were to keep all 3 lines. So let's go back to our worksheet. For our supreme chair then, we have, for our staying the same because we're on our status quo, same, no change worksheet, we have 2,028. For our standard, we go to the 2,874. And for our basic, we use the 4635. So you see here where we get that information. So our average monthly demand is simply our annual divided by annual forecast divided by 12 months. And that will get us our average monthly demand. Now, why would we need to know what the monthly is going to be? Well, because we need to make sure that we can produce the amount that we estimate to sell. So for that, we do a quick double check from our production. And we take a look at our input. So let's pull up our actual production worksheet here. And we know from our original instructions, from our operations manager instructions, that we have the capacity for raw materials to produce 800 units, meaning that no more than 800 units worth of raw materials can go in at the beginning of each month. So if we were on our Supreme, we're going to type in 800 for input and our maximum output. The maximum number we can produce is 325. So I'm going to make sure that we compare average monthly demand with total capacity to produce each month. An important thing to compare, right? Because we can only sell as much as we can produce. And we know that in our status quo, all things being equal, that we don't go over capacity. But it's something we want to note. Now, our capacity isn't going to change, so it's helpful to take what our total capacity is and make a note of it on each of your worksheets. So let's go capacity equals Supreme 325. And I'm going to do that for each one of our chairs to make sure that I remember to double check that I'm not estimating to sell more than I have the ability to make. Our price for each chair comes from our instructions, from our sales instructions. So we want to go back to those sales instructions. There we go. And it says our Supreme was 7,000, 5,000, and 3,000. So here we're going to put in the price for our Supreme chair, which is $7,000. So our gross annual revenue now is going to be our price times our annual forecast or annual production if less than forecast. Because again, we can't sell more than we can make. So that's where we make sure we have our double check in there. Okay, so that completes just this high level first part. It gives us our gross revenue. So remember, our net profit equals revenue minus variable expenses and fixed expenses. Well, now we know what revenue is. So we can go on to the other expenses that we have from sales and production.